A black simple woman denied a test drive until her dealership owner husband walks in. Denied a test drive because she didn't look like she could afford it. Big mistake. Why? Because her husband owned the dealership. But the real shock is the unbelievable corruption they uncovered next, going far beyond simple prejudice. Like, subscribe, and listen now to hear the whole satisfying story of exposure and justice. The cool gleam of polished chrome felt smooth under Amelia Richardson's fingertips. She traced the elegant lines of the hybrid SUV parked prominently on the showroom floor of Elite Motors, its pearlescent white paint seeming to glow under the spotlights. This was its spacious, fuel-efficient, perfect for the community outreach programs run by the charity she managed. Lost in thought, calculating cargo space versus mileage, she barely registered the approach of the sharp-suited man until he spoke, his voice like ice scraping across glass. "Can I help you?" The question wasn't an offer, it was a challenge. Vincent Martel, the dealership manager, judging by his name tag and imperious air, stood with his arms crossed, effectively blocking her view. His eyes, cold and assessing, swept over Amelia's simple white blouse, comfortable jeans, and practical sneakers with undisguised disdain. "Actually, yes," Amelia replied, offering a polite smile. "I'm very interested in this model. I'd like to arrange a test drive, if possible." Martel let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "A test drive?" He tilted his head, his expression a mixture of disbelief and mockery. "Ma'am, this is an $80,000 vehicle. We don't just let anyone take it for a joyride." He gestured vaguely towards the exit. "Perhaps something in our pre-owned lot would be more suitable." Amelia's smile faltered, a knot tightening in her stomach. She recognized the look, the tone. It was achingly familiar. "I assure you, I'm a serious buyer," she said, keeping her voice even. "Could you please check the availability for a drive?" Martel didn't move. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial sneer. "Look, let's not waste each other's time. Browse is fine, but test drives are for customers who can actually afford to buy. Why don't you just take a brochure?" He tapped a manicured finger on the gleaming hood. "Don't want fingerprints all over the merchandise if you're not buying, right?" The implication was clear, insulting, and hung heavy in the air of the luxurious showroom. He wasn't just denying a test drive. He was denying her legitimacy as a customer based purely on his prejudiced assessment. Amelia Richardson, 36, moved through her world with a quiet competence that often belied the significant influence she wielded. While her husband, Daniel Richardson, 40, navigated the high-stakes world of corporate acquisitions as CEO of the rapidly expanding Richardson Auto Group, Amelia dedicated her time to managing a successful nonprofit foundation focused on youth empowerment in underserved Houston communities. Her days were filled with grant proposals, program development, mentoring sessions, and community meetings work that was meaningful and demanding, requiring sharp intelligence, empathy, and excellent organizational skills. Their life together was a comfortable blend of Daniel's corporate success and Amelia's community focus. They lived well, thanks to Daniel's business acumen, but Amelia consciously eschewed overt displays of wealth. She drove a modest sedan, preferred practical clothing over designer labels, and found more fulfillment in seeing her foundation's impact than in attending society galas. She believed actions spoke louder than appearances, a philosophy that sometimes put her at odds with the assumptions made in the image-conscious circles Daniel's work occasionally required them to navigate. Daniel, a dynamic and driven businessman, deeply admired Amelia's commitment and down-to-earth nature. He was fiercely protective of her and shared her values, often leveraging his corporate resources to support her foundation's initiatives. Richardson Auto Group was his passion project turned empire, built on smart deals and a reputation for integrity, a reputation he guarded closely. His latest acquisition was Elite Motors, a dealership known for its high-end European imports and, unfortunately, a somewhat stuffy, old-guard reputation that Daniel intended to change. He saw potential for growth, but also recognized the need to modernize its culture, make it more welcoming, more reflective of Houston's diverse population. He'd only officially taken ownership a few weeks prior, and the integration process was still underway. Many of the existing staff, including management like Vincent Martell, were holdovers from the previous ownership, their long-term fate still under evaluation as Daniel assessed their fit with his company's values. Amelia hadn't even visited Elite Motors since the acquisition. Her interest in the hybrid SUV was purely practical. Her foundation needed a reliable, roomy vehicle for transporting kids to events, delivering supplies, and handling various program logistics. The dealership happened to be conveniently located near one of their community centers, and she decided to stop by on her way home from a meeting, dressed in her usual work attire, intending to gather information and perhaps schedule a test drive for later. She knew Daniel owned the place, but she preferred to be treated like any other customer, to gauge the authentic experience. The world of luxury cars, with its emphasis on status and appearance, often harbored subtle biases. Amelia was about to experience them in their most overt and ugly form. Amelia stood her ground in the brightly lit showroom, the scent of leather and new car polish thick in the air. Vincent Martell's dismissive refusal echoed around her, bouncing off the gleaming surfaces of vehicles she could easily afford multiple times over. The initial sting of surprise quickly morphed into a familiar, weary anger. It wasn't the first time she'd been judged by her appearance, underestimated because she didn't fit a certain mold, but the blatant nature of Martell's prejudice in a place of business, her husband's place of business, though he didn't know it, felt particularly egregious. "I don't think you understand," Amelia said, her voice still calm but gaining an edge of steel. "I'm not Browse. I came here specifically to test drive this vehicle with the intention of purchasing it for my organization. Now, are you going to assist me, or should I speak to someone else?" Martell seemed to take her persistence as an affront. He chuckled humorlessly and signaled across the showroom floor to a younger salesman leaning against a desk, scrolling through his phone. "Jennings, come give me a hand here." Kyle Jennings, slicked back hair and an overly eager smile that didn't quite mask a calculating look in his eyes, sauntered over. Martell jerked his chin towards Amelia. "This lady thinks she wants to test drive the new hybrid." He said it as if relaying a joke. "Why don't you explain our dealership policy on qualifying test drives?" Jennings gave Amelia a slow, insolent once-over, his gaze lingering on her simple clothes and sneakers. "Right policy," he drawled, leaning casually against the SUV. "Well, ma'am, for a vehicle in this price range, we're talking 80 grand, plus we typically need to verify serious purchasing intent. You know, run a credit check, confirm financing pre-approval, just standard procedure to make sure we're dealing with qualified buyers." He winked. "Wouldn't want to put unnecessary miles on such a beauty, would we?" It was a thinly veiled interrogation of her financial standing, designed to intimidate and embarrass. "My finances are not your concern at this stage," Amelia stated coolly. "I want to drive the car. If I like it, we can discuss the purchase process. That's how it usually works." "Maybe elsewhere, honey," Martell interjected sharply, stepping closer. "But Elite Motors has standards. We don't cater to looky-loose or people trying to get content for their TikTok." He raised his voice, addressing the showroom at large, ensuring other customers and staff could hear. "Jennings, make sure she doesn't get too close to the other vehicles." We can't have people smudging up the inventory if they're not buying. The humiliation washed over Amelia, hot and fierce. Heads turned. A nearby couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. She saw a flicker of sympathy in the eyes of the receptionist, Maria Flores, working behind a nearby counter. But Maria quickly looked down when Martel shot her a warning glare. Amelia felt a surge of anger, but she refused to let them see her lose her composure. Her initial goal test drive the car was still there, but it was now overshadowed by the need to address this blatant disrespect. Her reaction wasn't to shrink away, but to stand taller. She met Martel's contemptuous gaze directly. "I assure you," she said, her voice low but carrying weight, "you will regret treating a customer this way." Martel just laughed, loud and dismissive. "Regret it? Lady, the only thing I'll regret is wasting this much time on you. Now get out, before I have security escort you." He turned his back on her, a gesture of ultimate dismissal, leaving Amelia standing there, stunned and furious, under the cold lights of the showroom. The dismissal hung in the air, thick and final. Vincent Martel gestured sharply at Kyle Jennings. "See her out, Jennings, and make sure she doesn't wander." Jennings, puffing up with borrowed authority, stepped towards Amelia. "All right, ma'am, you heard the manager. Time to go." He made a shooing motion with his hands, his earlier fake smile replaced with an impatient frown. Amelia didn't budge. To be treated like a trespasser, judged and dismissed based on prejudice, ignited a core of defiance within her. "I'm not leaving until I speak with someone who understands customer service," she stated firmly, though her heart was pounding. "Oh, I understand service all right," Jennings sneered. "And right now, my service is telling you to leave before you cause more trouble." He took another step, invading her personal space, clearly intending to physically usher her towards the door. It was at that moment that Maria Flores, the receptionist, made a small, brave move. While Martel was momentarily distracted by another customer approaching him, Maria subtly caught Amelia's eye and gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head, her expression conveying apology and helplessness. Then, Amelia saw Maria discreetly type something into her phone under the counter. A silent ally, trapped within the system but trying to signal something. Before Jennings could make contact, Amelia held up her hand. "Don't touch me," she warned, her voice dangerously quiet. "I am waiting for proper assistance." Her refusal only seemed to amuse Martel, who had turned back to watch the exchange. "Proper assistance? You think calling corporate will help?" "Honey, I am corporate around here." He folded his arms again, leaning against a gleaming sedan. "Just go. People like you always try to make a scene when you can't get what you want." The phrase "people like you" echoed Martel's earlier words, confirming the racial animus driving the encounter. Other customers were now openly watching, some looking uncomfortable, others clearly siding with the dealership staff, whispering amongst themselves. One man muttered loudly enough for Amelia to hear, "Probably just wants a handout or a lawsuit." The prejudice wasn't just from the staff. It was reflected in the silent assent of some bystanders. Amelia felt a deep sense of isolation, but also a strengthening resolve. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the assumptions, the biases that people faced every day. Her initial goal had shifted from getting a test drive to simply demanding basic respect as a human being, as a potential customer. The primary obstacle was Martel's entrenched authority and blatant prejudice, amplified by Jennings's complicity and the uncomfortable silence or hostility of onlookers. Jennings reached out, his hand aiming for her arm. "Come on, lady, let's go." "I believe," a new voice cut through the tension, deep, calm, and carrying an unmistakable weight of command, that the lady expressed a desire not to be touched. Every head in the showroom swiveled toward the entrance. Standing there, impeccably dressed in a dark blue suit, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp and focused, was Daniel Richardson. He hadn't entered with fanfare, but his presence immediately altered the atmosphere. He walked calmly towards the center of the confrontation, his gaze moving from a startled Jennings to a suddenly wary Martel, and finally settling on Amelia, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. Maria Flores, behind the reception desk, let out a silent sigh of relief. The complication wasn't just Amelia pushing back. It was the arrival of an unknown, powerful variable, throwing the dealership's internal power dynamic into sudden, sharp relief. Daniel's quiet arrival was the first step towards completely upending the situation. Daniel Richardson surveyed the scene, his eyes missing nothing. The hostile stance of his dealership manager and salesman, the palpable tension in the air, the other customers watching intently, and most importantly, the mixture of anger and strained composure on his wife's face. He saw Kyle Jennings poised to physically remove Amelia. "Is there a problem here?" Daniel asked, his voice dangerously soft, directed at Vincent Martel, but holding the attention of the entire room. Martel, momentarily thrown off balance by the unexpected appearance of someone radiating such authority, quickly tried to regain control. He didn't recognize Daniel. Immediately, Daniel hadn't spent much time on the showroom floor since the acquisition, focusing initially on back-office integration. "No problem, sir," Martel said, adopting a smoothly dismissive tone. "Just dealing with someone who doesn't seem to understand dealership policy." This lady was causing a disturbance, refusing to leave after being told she couldn't afford Dash. "Enough," Daniel cut him off, the single word silencing Martel instantly. He stepped forward, placing himself between the salesman and Amelia, and gently took his wife's hand. "Amelia, are you all right?" Amelia nodded, squeezing his hand, a wave of relief washing over her, quickly followed by renewed anger at the situation that had necessitated his intervention. Daniel turned his cool gaze back to Martel, then to Jennings. "This lady," he said, his voice hardening, "is Amelia Richardson. My wife." He paused, letting the words sink in, watching the color drain from Martel's and Jennings's faces. "And he continued, his voice dropping slightly but gaining intensity, am Daniel Richardson, the new owner of Elite Motors and CEO of Richardson Auto Group." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by a collective intake of breath from the onlookers. Martel stared, aghast, his mouth opening and closing silently. Jennings looked like he might faint. "Mr. Richardson," Martel finally stammered, his face slick with sudden sweat. "Sir, I had no idea. A complete misunderstanding. If I had known. She was dressed so. Simply, Daniel echoed, his eyes like chips of ice. "Or is it because she's black, Mr. Martel? Which one disqualified her from basic courtesy? From a test drive? Which one made you assume she couldn't afford to be in your showroom?" He didn't wait for an answer. His gaze swept over Martel and Jennings. "Your assumptions, your behavior, are unacceptable. They have no place in any dealership I own." He turned slightly, addressing the entire showroom, his voice clear and resonant. "Let me be perfectly clear. Elite Motors, under Richardson Auto Group ownership, has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. Every customer who walks through that door deserves respect, regardless of what they look like, what they wear, or the color of their skin." He looked back at the two stunned employees. "Mr. Martel, Mr. Jennings, collect your personal belongings. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The public firing was swift, brutal, and decisive. It was the turning point. Justice for the immediate insult had been delivered instantly and unequivocally. Amelia had been vindicated in the most dramatic way possible. But as Martel and Jennings were silently led away, looking utterly defeated, Amelia caught Maria Flores's eye again. The receptionist gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a look that seemed to say, "There's more." Daniel's decisive action had solved the immediate problem, but Amelia felt a growing certainty that Martel's blatant prejudice wasn't just a personal failing. It was a symptom of a deeper sickness within the dealership, something her husband's ownership hadn't yet rooted out. The point of no return wasn't just the firing. It was the realization that fixing Elite Motors would require more than just removing two bad apples. In the relative quiet of the dealership manager's office, Vincent Martel's former office, now temporarily commandeered by Daniel, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold assessment of the situation. Daniel, shedding his suit jacket, made a series of curt phone calls, informing his regional operations manager of the terminations and instructing HR to begin the severance and replacement process immediately. Amelia sat quietly, sipping the water Daniel had brought her, replaying the encounter in her mind. Martel's arrogance, his certainty that he could act with impunity, gnawed at her. "Daniel," she said finally, it felt practiced, like he's done it before. He was so sure of himself, even when I pushed back. Daniel nodded grimly. "I agree. That wasn't just a moment of poor judgment. It was ingrained behavior. I knew integrating this place wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect anything this blatant at the management level." Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Maria Flores, the receptionist, looking nervous but determined. "Mr. Richardson? Mrs. Richardson? Can I speak with you for a moment?" Privately, Daniel ushered her in. Maria clutched her hands together, taking a deep breath. "What you saw today, Mrs. Richardson, I am so sorry. Mr. Martel, he often told us to discourage certain types of customers. People who didn't look the part, especially minority customers. He said they were usually just looking or would haggle too much or complain about service later." Amelia leaned forward. "Discourage how?" "Make them wait," Maria explained, her words tumbling out quickly. "Ignore them. Question their finances like Mr. Jennings did. Be slow processing paperwork." Sometimes, Martel created this atmosphere, and he worked very closely with Olivia Crane in finance. There were always whispers about deals she pushed through quickly for Martel's preferred clients, while others got delayed. Olivia Crane, the finance manager, another holdover from the previous ownership. Amelia exchanged a look with Daniel. This confirmed her gut feeling. Martel likely wasn't acting alone. Amelia asked gently, "Did you ever hear anything more specific? About finances? Or service issues?" Maria hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes customers would call back, complaining about problems with cars they'd just bought, or issues with warranty claims being denied. It seemed to happen more with the customers Martel didn't like. He and MS. Crane handled all the warranty paperwork. There were rumors that maybe not all the claims were legitimate, but that some cars sold had known issues that weren't disclosed. She also admitted she'd captured snippets of conversations on her phone during staff meetings where Martel made disparaging remarks, similar to what Amelia experienced. She offered to share them. This was more than just discriminatory sales tactics. It pointed towards potential fraud, possibly endangering customers by selling faulty vehicles and manipulating warranty claims. Amelia, whose work involved meticulous budget management and oversight for her foundation, felt her analytical mind click into gear. This required a proper investigation. Daniel, Amelia said decisively, "We need to look into this deeply, not just Martel and Jennings. We need to audit finance, service records, everything." Daniel readily agreed, his expression hardening. His company's reputation was on the line, not to mention the ethical and legal implications. He immediately contacted the head of Richardson Auto Group's internal audit team and a trusted forensic accounting firm, instructing them to launch a discreet but thorough investigation into Elite Motor sales practices, service records, and financial transactions, focusing on Olivia Crane and any connections to Martel. The regrouping was swift. Their goal expanded dramatically, from addressing the initial racist incident to uncovering and dismantling a potentially widespread corrupt scheme within a dealership. Amelia, initially the victim, became a driving force behind the investigation, determined to understand the full scope of the rot. Maria Flores, emboldened by the Richardsons' actions, became a crucial inside source. The battle was no longer just about respect. It was about uncovering potential crimes and protecting future customers. The investigation proceeded with quiet efficiency over the following week. While Daniel managed the public-facing aspects, appointing an interim manager, reassuring staff, dealing with minor press inquiries about the firings, Amelia worked closely with the audit team and Maria Flores. Maria provided invaluable context, identifying patterns, recalling specific customer interactions, and sharing the audio snippets she had recorded. One recording captured Martel in a staff meeting saying, "Focus on the quick closes, the whales. Don't waste hours on the tire kickers or the ones likely to nickel and dime you on service down the road, you know the type. Get them in and out, or just out." While not explicitly mentioning race, the implication, combined with his observed behavior, was clear. The forensic accountants quickly unearthed red flags in Olivia Crane's domain. They found numerous warranty claims filed and paid out for high-cost repairs on vehicles whose service histories showed minimal issues. Conversely, they found records of minority customers whose legitimate warranty claims for serious problems had been repeatedly denied or stalled, often resulting in the customers giving up or paying out of pocket. Cross-referencing sales data revealed a pattern. Certain high-value used cars, often acquired at auction with known, but potentially undisclosed mechanical issues, were sold as is or with limited warranties primarily to affluent, white customers referred by Martel, while minority buyers were often steered towards different inventory or faced tougher financing terms handled by Crane. The IT team, digging into archived emails, found a smoking gun: communications between Martel and Crane. One email from Crane read, "Vince, push through the warranty claim on the Henderson car like we discussed. Should cover the bonus shortfall. Keep steering the high-maintenance types away from F&I if possible. Too many questions about coverage sink the profit." Another from Martel. "Good work, Olivia. Had another browser today, wasting time on the hybrid. Handled it. Need to keep the showroom floor clear for qualified buyers." The picture was grimly clear. Martel and Crane were running a multi-layered scam, discriminating against minority customers to minimize perceived hassle and potential complaints, possibly selling defective vehicles to unsuspecting buyers, likely Martel's whales who might not scrutinize details, and funding it all, or skimming profits, through systemic warranty fraud. As the evidence mounted, Daniel and Amelia prepared for the final phase: exposure and accountability. They decided against quiet terminations and legal settlements. The corruption was too deep, the discrimination too deliberate. It required a public cleansing. They scheduled a mandatory all-hands meeting for all Elite Motors staff, inviting key clients and discreetly notifying local investigative reporters and law enforcement based on the fraud evidence. The dark night of the soul came in the days leading up to the meeting. Amelia felt the weight of potentially destroying careers, even corrupt ones. The inevitable negative publicity for the dealership Daniel was trying to rebuild, and the ugly reality of the prejudice she had faced being laid bare. Daniel worried about the morale of the innocent employees and the challenge of restoring trust. Could they truly root out this culture? But looking at the evidence, thinking of Maria's bravery, and remembering the humiliation she felt on the showroom floor, Amelia knew they had to proceed. They needed to send an unequivocal message. Preparations were finalized, evidence compiled, statements drafted. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of Elite Motors. The main showroom floor of Elite Motors, usually a hushed space of polished surfaces and quiet negotiations, crackled with nervous energy. All employees were gathered, along with invited press and a few key long-term clients. Daniel Richardson stood at a lectern, Amelia beside him, calm and composed. Olivia Crane stood near the finance department entrance, looking wary but attempting an air of nonchalance. Daniel began, his voice steady, acknowledging the recent management changes and thanking the staff for their patience during the transition. Then his tone shifted. However, he stated, our internal review, prompted by an unacceptable customer service incident, has uncovered issues far more serious than mere policy violations. He briefly outlined the findings, the pattern of discriminatory treatment towards certain customer demographics, the irregularities in warranty claims, the evidence of financial mismanagement. Amelia then stepped forward. Last week, she said, her voice clear and carrying through the silent room, I came into this dealership excited to purchase a vehicle for my foundation. Instead of assistance, I was met with suspicion, disrespect, and racist assumptions, simply because of the color of my skin and the clothes I wore. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. What I experienced, we have learned, was not an isolated event, but part of a deliberate, corrupt system orchestrated by Mr. Martel and... She turned her gaze towards the finance manager. A mess. Olivia Crane. As Crane paled, Daniel signaled the audit team lead, who presented key email excerpts and financial summaries on large displays. Maria Flores, standing near Amelia, bravely played a brief, clear audio clip from her phone, capturing Martel instructing staff to avoid high-maintenance types. Crane gasped, stepping forward. This is outrageous. Lies. These are taken out of context. I dash. Are these out of context, MS? Crane. Daniel interjected, holding up copies of falsified warranty claims bearing her signature, alongside evidence of corresponding fund transfers to accounts linked to her and Martel. This wasn't just poor service or bad judgment. This was calculated fraud and discrimination. Before Crane could respond further, plainclothes police officers, who had entered discreetly moments earlier after being alerted by Daniel's security chief, moved swiftly towards her. Olivia Crane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and related charges, one officer stated calmly but firmly. Crane looked utterly stunned as she was quietly escorted out. The climax wasn't a shouting match, but a cold, methodical exposure of truth, backed by irrefutable evidence, leading to immediate legal consequences in front of the entire dealership. The arrests of Olivia Crane and, subsequently, Vincent Martel, based on the uncovered evidence and Crane's cooperation, sent a clear message through the Richardson Auto Group and the wider Houston business community. Both faced multiple charges, ultimately receiving prison sentences for fraud and related offenses. The investigation triggered a mandatory review of Elite Motors practices by state regulators, resulting in fines but also validating the reforms Daniel was already implementing. Elite Motors began a transformation. Daniel installed new management committed to transparency and ethical practices. Amelia, drawing on her nonprofit expertise, spearheaded the development and implementation of a comprehensive anti-bias, anti-discrimination, and ethics training program rolled out not just at Elite Motors, but across all Richardson Auto Group dealerships. Signage promoting inclusivity and clear reporting mechanisms for misconduct became prominent. Maria Flores, recognized for her integrity and courage, was promoted to sales team lead, with Daniel personally funding a scholarship for her to pursue a degree in business management. The dealership actively worked to rebuild trust with the community, sponsoring local events and offering transparent pricing and financing options. A few weeks later, Amelia returned to Elite Motors. The atmosphere was noticeably different, welcoming, respectful. A young, newly hired salesperson named Jada greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Richardson, welcome. How can I help you today?" Amelia smiled. "I'm here to finally test drive that hybrid SUV." "Absolutely," Jada said enthusiastically. "You deserve to drive any car you want here." As Amelia pulled the smooth, quiet hybrid out onto the Houston streets, finally taking the drive she was initially denied, she felt a sense of closure and purpose. Later, talking with Daniel, she reflected, "They judged me by my cover, Daniel. They never imagined who I was or what I represented." Daniel put his arm around her. Their failure of imagination opened the door for necessary change. "Amelia, you weren't just buying a car. You were driving reform. You're the engine here." Amelia later established the Richardson Equity Initiative, a program funded by the Auto Group to provide financial literacy resources and assistance for minority car buyers, along with vocational training scholarships for youth in underserved communities interested in the automotive industry. Her experience, born from an ugly incident of prejudice, became a catalyst not just for justice within one dealership, but for broader positive change, proving that dignity, when demanded and defended, could pave new roads.